I want to talk about failure. Here's the thing, what's the secret to success? We talk about this all the time. What's the secret to success? You could say it's hard work or dedication, positive attitude, but the real secret to me is failure. Okay? And so today I'm going to teach you how to embrace it, how to learn from it, and ultimately how to fail forward. Okay? So let's talk about that right now. So failure. What is failure and what does it look like? The definition of failure varies greatly among people. It can be a very personal thing, failure, and each person defines their own idea of what success looks like and what failure looks like. For some people, success only is this, and some people failure is this. So the definition is pretty all over the place. But whatever that definition is for you or your kids, when you lose, you'll need time and space to put it into proper perspective. So you got to figure out for you what is success and what is failure. You got to kind of define it for yourself. And there are actually plenty of ways to fail. Okay, so having a bad idea, not executing well, not having the courage to change or adapt, or not building the right team, making bad decisions. These are all kind of ways that we define failure. But another way of failing to me is just not even trying. Like not trying to me is a big failure. And there are more typical, tangible ways that we fail that are defined by the world around us. But there are a lot of things in life that are hard. You might even see, they might even seem insurmountable, especially if you've experienced a lot of failure in life and setback. I personally have had a lot of failure in my life. I look around to my peers, and if I was to compare myself, I like to think, man, I've failed more than all of these people. I've had so much failure in my life, and in setbacks and roadblocks, and I could have quit so many times along the way, but the things I'm going to talk to you about today are things that help me to survive those failures, to learn from them, to embrace them, to get better. So the first thing is kind of admitting the failure and embracing it. Being able to admit you failed at something is a liberating experience. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm holding on to this thing, I don't want to fail, and they're not willing to admit it. One of the hardest things to say is I failed. Okay, like I said, I can tell you coaching jobs, mistakes I've made, losing games. It's hard to admit you failed. And so the real reason admitting failure is so hard is it makes us feel vulnerable. Vulnerability is hard. And it's something that I have learned as I've gotten older to get better and better at. But, I've had to come to teams at the end of a game and say, hey guys, I made a mistake. I lost the game for us. It was my fault. It was on me. I should have done this better and I didn't, and I failed. So for me, being vulnerable, it's tough, and admitting it can be tough. Many people become scared of failure, not only to want to embrace it, but they're just scared to put themselves out there. We all have a desire to feel good. We all want to feel good about ourselves. And when we fail at something, we don't feel good about ourselves. We become less confident, and we're less likely to take new risks and try new things because, you know what? I failed so many times. I don't want to fail again. I'm scared of failing. So you know what? I'm just not going to try again. And this quote over here by Michael Jordan, I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying. I think for a lot of us, we get stuck in that. Athletes get stuck in that. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to try this new thing because it's really, really difficult to try something new. And you know what? I failed so many times. I don't want to do it again. And I can tell you, I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking from my heart. These are things that I feel, all the time. There are times that I have felt these things every day. So, by admitting it, you're literally setting yourself free of the weight of it, okay? So admit it. Say, you know what? I failed. Boom. I don't care. And I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to get better. I'm going to embrace it. And we learn from an early age. For whatever reason, whether it's our parents, coaches, teachers, we learn from an early age that failure is bad. So why would we want to embrace it? Okay, we talked about all the time, as a lot of our society, they tell us failure is bad. So why would I want to embrace that? But once you've embraced it, you're no longer, fearful of it. When you embrace failure, it allows you to move past the negatives and the disappointments, and it can change your mindset from failure is bad to failure can be good, and here's how to make it a tool for you. So in every situation, there are negatives and positives. And embracing failure isn't any different, okay? So let's talk about the negative ways that you can embrace failure. There are many people who see embracing failure as a negative or like a sign of weakness. Okay, we talk about this a lot. I think a lot of kids in that high school range, 10 to 18-year-old range in college, they feel like failure is a weakness. They try to keep their failures hidden. As a kid, we used the analogy like the man behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz. He was hiding back there because they believe that failure, embracing it, that they're giving up, they're giving in, or they're setting lower standards. A lot of times I think a lot of kids look at it, failure, as giving up. Like, you know what? I don't want to quit. I don't want to give up. So I don't want to admit that I failed at this thing. I'm going to just keep grinding on it. So defining yourself, and for me, identity and defining yourself as a failure is another way of embracing it. So a negative way of embracing it. It's an excuse to say, I can't do it. I give up. Why bother? You know what I mean? And what people who see failure this way, they don't recognize that sometimes you need to go back to the base of the mountain to start climbing again. Miley Cyrus has this song. I know how different people always feel about Miley Cyrus, but she has a song about the climb. And to me, it resonates me because failure just means we go back to the base of the mountain. We start the climb again. And I embrace the climb. The climb to me is where you grow and you get better. So let's talk about positive ways that we can embrace failure. Embracing failure positively, it requires leap of faith. But once you jump over the hurdle, you'll understand that fearing failure only holds you back from reaching your potential. Like once you've embraced it and you can accept it, you can be vulnerable with it, you can understand that you can reach your potential. Using failure as an opportunity to learn is a healthy way to deal with the emotions that come from it. It's even better if you can embrace it in a team setting. So if you can embrace it, own it, not just to yourself, but in a team setting. If you go to your team, if you're an athlete, high school, college player, and you say, hey, I failed, guys. I let you guys down. Allowing that support system to embrace it and embrace your failure, they can pick you up, and it's really good. By acknowledging it as a team, like if it's a team failure, if we all can acknowledge it and we can all fail, that's okay. Because now it's like, oh, you know what? Different players on my team, we all failed. We failed together, and we can move on versus feeling like I'm the only one who failed. Because that's not usually the case, especially in sports or team sports. And by recognizing that everyone fails, you're able to embrace it as a regular part of your life. Most of the way that we learn, the way that I've learned in life, is trial and error. We fall down, we get back up again. We fall down, we get back up again. That famous song, getting knocked down and getting back up again. And it's natural to recognize that everyone fails and often. Like you have to understand, like failure happens often. It can happen every day in practice. And so for me, understanding it's not like a one-time thing. We don't fail once at life. I could list 1 million failures in my life. It would take me forever to list them all. So here's why failure is crucial to growth and personal success. Failure gives us some of our best lessons in life. Failure inspires us to be better and acts as a source of motivation. For me, it's definitely motivation. Failure teaches humility. Failure definitely teaches humility, and humility is a really good thing to have. Failure, when embraced properly, allows us to take more risks. I want athletes to take risks. I want parents and adults, you guys, I want you to take more risks in life. And failure makes success taste even better. There's a great quote by Derek Jeter that says, all of my failures, something about, my failures lead to my successes feeling so much better. Like again, when you've had those failures, when you get some success and you get a big win, it's huge. And failure makes us human. That's one of the things that's awesome about it. And if you have to fail, and you have to fail forward. So let's talk about failing forward. Over the history of time, you think about people, they laughed at Christopher Columbus when he said he was going to go around the world. They all laughed at Thomas Edison when he recorded sound. Think about the Wilbur brothers when they said they were going to be the first ones to build the airplane and fly. I'm going to guess that those people failed, especially like the Wright brothers. That they probably failed 1 million times before it worked. And there are tons of people in history that failed so many times. by any objective measure, we would all call them failures. Like if we were to say, you know what, these are the measurements of failure, we would say they all failed. And yet, those people, the greatest people in the world, they feel like they're okay with failure. Have you noticed that? Like they accepted it, they embraced it. Why? Because the most inventive people are usually the best at failing forward, meaning they're learning from what they do wrong. Okay, so failing forward is taking that failure, learning from it, and then taking it to the next risk, taking it back to the base of the mountain, getting to the starting to the climb, and saying, okay, I learned that mistake that time. This time I'm going to do this differently. You know, Christopher Columbus, for example, he insisted the world was round, and he missed America on the first time. He didn't even land here, right? And there's a lot of history behind that. You know, the Wright brothers claimed that flying was possible, and then they nearly killed themselves. If you ever look into the Wright brothers, they literally almost killed themselves several times, but they failed forward and became the fathers of aviation. And you know, we talk about the Wright brothers now in the history of the world as like, you know, they are cemented in history forever, which is kind of cool. And then we have Albert Einstein. Everyone knows the name Albert Einstein, right? One of the most incredible people in history. He was a genius, but if you know his story a little bit, he was kind of a lousy student. He literally failed his way through school and everything else. I said I wish I would love to see him in school nowadays. He probably is a 2.0 student, right? But ended up being one of the most incredible inventors of all time. And we would say if you were to measure his life for the first half of his life, people would say he was a big failure. One of the things I want you guys to remember back, you know, I'm a huge fan of the Olympics. I watched Usain Bolt over the years, and to me, Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt are two people that I was just glued to the screen. If they were going to compete, I wanted to watch them. They were the best in the world, the best of all time at the sport that they did. But you know, at the end of Usain Bolt's time, back in 2017, he ran in the 100-meter dash in the World Championships in London. Okay, and he had a 45 race win streak. He gets in the World Championship and he finishes in third place. Okay, third place. And it was like, everyone's like shocked. It's like, what? This guy, greatest athlete of all time. He's got a 45 race win. He's never going to lose. Pretty much, I can't think of anybody who would argue that he was the greatest sprinter of all time. But here's the thing. Perfection does not exist. Even for someone as talented and strong as Usain Bolt. Okay, perfection does not exist, especially in sports like baseball or softball, where we fail so much. And you can't expect to succeed at everything you do. Okay, I know for me, sometimes I think that way, and I get humbled pretty quickly. You just need to accept the fact that you're going to fail, and if you're going to do your best work, you need to make sure that everyone on the team understands, hey, we're going to fail. We're gonna try our best. We're gonna fail. We're gonna learn from it. We're gonna get better. And if you're a coach listening, you need to free your team from the shackles of perfection. Don't let them ruin, their season, their practices, trying to be perfect. We want to practice as good as we can for that. And when we fail, we're gonna fail. Let's get better at it. Let's improve on it. Let's learn from it. But if it's just like, hey, here's the perfection is the measurement, and if you don't get there, you failed. Your team is not going to get better. They're not going to learn from that. So, let's talk about managing your mindset or your team's mindset for failure, okay? So, here's what happens. Athletes, young and old, they have high expectations. Okay, parents, you know this. Our kids have high expectations. You have high expectations of them. They tell themselves they're going to win for the team, make no mistakes. They're going to hit the most home runs. They're going to throw the most touchdowns. They're going to score the most goals. Like, players have really high expectations. And then when they don't meet them, parents or athletes, they're really hard on themselves. And when they're really hard on themselves, it hurts their confidence and it hurts their performance. So without confidence, it's tough for kids to play harder when they're having a bad day. So if perfection is the metric, they're failing at that, they're not getting exactly what they get, guess what? Their confidence is going to go way down. And if they don't have confidence, it's difficult to bounce back from a tough play, a mistake, or something bad that happens. You know, I think about the Muhammad Ali. If you grew up, you're an older guy like me, you know about Muhammad Ali. You know, his road to success wasn't devoid of setbacks. That guy had so many setbacks. I read an article that says in the early days of boxing, experts used a series of measurements to assess a boxer's skills. And when he was just starting out, Muhammad Ali failed every single one of the tests. He failed every test. But what made Muhammad Ali great, if you know him at all, was he had confidence that bordered on arrogance. I think the term that we used growing up in high school and college was cocky. He was, almost cocky. And after he defeated Sonny Liston for the first time, this is the quote Ali said: "I want everyone to bear witness. I am the greatest. I am the greatest thing that ever lived. I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest." Okay, so, and the message here is, not everyone is going to believe in you. That's why you must have faith in yourself. You must learn to rely on your own goals, no matter what your challenges encounter. And remember, Muhammad Ali, before that, he failed every test. People told him he wasn't going to be great. He wasn't going to beat Sonny Liston. And to me, his statement wasn't about just pure arrogance and being a jerk. He was saying, you know what? No one believed in me. I believed in me. I'm going to be the greatest. And so having that belief, you can't have that belief if you haven't failed and had a lot of people not believe in you. So, let's learn from that. Let's learn from our failure. Young players should view mistakes as an opportunity, not as a punishment, to figure out how to improve their performance instead of getting frustrated. For example, if a kid has trouble hitting, let's talk about baseball, for example, or softball. A kid has trouble hitting a certain pitch, a curveball in their last game, or softball, you know what, I can't hit that drop ball. Next practice, let's work on those things. Let's not bury them. Let's not get in trouble for them. You've got to come up with some type of a flushing mechanism. When a child makes a mistake and looks at the coach or the parent, one of the things that we say is flush it, or flush away the mistake, or we say, what's your flush mechanism? This is something I've used in my coaching for 20 years. So our players each have to identify their flush mechanism. For our hitters, a lot of times they might, after they make a mistake at the plate, they'll take their foot and they'll scratch the batter's box with their foot, kind of wiping away the mistake, wiping it clean, flushing it, letting it go. As a fielder, sometimes we have our fielders look at the foul pole. Every baseball, softball field has foul poles. So they'll look at the foul pole, they'll flush it, and then they'll come back to the moment. And so, and I'll tell you, I've got some players that really have a hard time flushing it. Let's say they strike out. In college, we've got dugouts where sometimes we've got bathrooms or locker rooms. I allow our players to go back there. They can scream and yell in that 20 to 30 seconds, flush it, and then get back to the field. But when they get back, they've got to be locked in. So we talk about a flush mechanism, and I tell them they have enough time to flush it in the time between plays. Like in basketball, sometimes in football, you don't have very much time, especially in like a sport like basketball or soccer. But in football, baseball, softball, sometimes, and even volleyball, you've got about 30 seconds to get your mind right, to flush it, to get back locked in. And so, as the saying goes, we learn from our mistakes. Embracing failure is the reason why parents let their children fall down and get back up again. Okay, same thing. I think about your children when they first started to walk. We didn't yell at them every time they fell down. They got back up, they fell down. We didn't say, "You suck at walking. Come on, you can do it." We embrace it. We were patient with them. It's the reason why students, the exams, and it's the reason why sports athletes have come back after major defeats. So, lastly, you've got to learn to learning to love the risks. Okay, but you need to learn how to view failure in a different light. Our kids need to learn how to make mistakes and to make sure it's okay in their mind. When one sees failure in a different light, one learns to love to take risks. So when we can go from making failure a bad thing to making it a positive thing and embracing it, we start to take risks more. And we love to take risks more. And I'm telling you, in that space where kids learn to take risks, that's where they grow the most. That's where they learn. And so for me, I want to encourage risk. Even at the college level, we're telling our athletes all the time, take risks, learn how to take risks. And if you're coaching, if you're a parent or you're coaching kids, I don't care what age they are, when an athlete makes a mistake, do not remove them from the game or do not punish them. Sit them on the bench right away. I know a lot of coaches I've seen a lot of times in basketball, you make a mistake or a turnover, boom, timeout, you go onto the bench. Don't do this. Instead, keep them in the game. Support them. Tell them it's okay. Hey, buddy, you got the next one. We got your back. It's even better when if you're a student athlete listening to me right now talking. If you're a pitcher or a second baseman and the first baseman makes an error, point at them. Hey, buddy, you got it. Hey, it's all right. Shake it off. Flush it. Get the next one. We got your back. Positive talk. Because you got to imagine the next time they get one, how much confidence you're instilling with them when you do that versus, come on, you got to do that. Come on. Or you just put them on the bench. This tells the kid that you believe in them. You've got their back, and you're letting them know, hey, get ready for the next play. I believe in you. And you may think that taking risks is risky for your sport. Okay, so you might think, oh, I don't want my kids taking a lot of risks. But the reality is that not taking risk is far more risky because playing the game safe is not the way to go. You cannot get the most success that way. So, we teach our kids all the time, thinking about in baseball and softball, being aggressive on the bases and taking risks because that way they can learn what their ceiling is. They can learn how far they can reach. But if we're coaching them in these little boxes, and here are the rules that you have to do all the time and don't let them take any risks, you don't know what they're capable of. Okay, so the biggest thing that I teach our kids is to learn how to problem solve efficiently. Learning to problem solve is one of the positive outcomes when athletes overcome challenges. It teaches us new and different ways to tackling a challenge. So, helping your kids to solve the problems on their own, that's another way versus the coaches doing it. And again, we can't be afraid to fail. That's one of the biggest things. We cannot be afraid to fail. I think if you look at a lot of athletes in the world talking about failure, let's talk about, everyone knows who Babe Ruth is. Even little kids know who Babe Ruths are. Even if you're not a baseball fan, you know who Babe Ruth is. Here's the thing you gotta understand about Babe Ruth. At one time, he held the record, major league record, all time for strikeouts. If we were just to look at that metric, Babe Ruth was a huge failure. Huge failure. He's one of the all-time strikeout leaders. I think Reggie Jackson might be the strikeout leader right now. Reggie Jackson's the Hall of Famer, one of the greatest players of all time. I think he leads the MLB in strikeouts, career strikeouts. So is he a failure? Are those two people failures? And their success overshadows their failures because they took risks, okay? Babe Ruth said one time, one of my favorite quotes, I've used this many, many times in my life, "Every strike brings me closer to my next home run." So just as Babe Ruth failures led to his success, so should yours. Okay? Use failure as fuel. Think about this. Use failure as fuel. When Michael Jordan tried out for his varsity team, if you know the story, tried to make the varsity team as a freshman, sophomore, didn't make the varsity team. And a great quote by Michael Jordan here that I've written down says, "I've missed over 9,000 shots in my career. 9,000. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. 26 game-winning shots, and I've missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Think about that. Let your failure drive you in your career. Use every setback as motivation to do better in your future. Do not give up. Think about someone like Peyton Manning, who's won 2 Super Bowls, but he's been to 4 of them. And it took him almost 10 years to get to his first Super Bowl. Manning's rookie season, their team went 3-13. Peyton Manning's first year went 3-13. Okay, that would be a failure. Did he give up? 10 years later in the Super Bowl, went to 4 of them, won 2 of them. Pretty incredible. Peyton Manning once said, "It's not wanting to win that makes you a winner. It's refusing to fail." Okay? So as your playing career's going, and parents, as your kids growing up, keep going. Don't let the challenges just stop them from reaching their goals. I can list more and more stories like Serena Williams, who lost a big match in the U.S. Open. Many considered Williams' loss to be one of the biggest upsets in tennis history. but it didn't set her back. She went right back to work, and she said, "If you know anything about me, I hate to lose." I mean, Serena, you and me, we're right on the same page. I hate to lose. She said, "I hate to lose. I've always said I hate losing more than I like winning, so that drives me to be the best that I can be. Looking at failure in a positive light will help you grow." So here's the thing. The bottom line. Failure builds. Failure can lead to more failure. And again, it can keep bringing us back to the bottom of the mountain. But until you learn to use each failure to your advantage, to let it fuel your future success. Let failure fuel your future success. Fail forward. If you don't embrace failure in a healthy way, you'll get stuck. I know many of you have done that. I know your kids have done that. They get stuck and they won't accomplish what they're able to accomplish. And to me, that would be the worst outcome of it all, right? We want our kids to reach their potential. I want you to reach your potential. And by getting stuck in failure, not embracing it, we don't get to do that. So at some point, you need to put your failure aside, embrace it, and get back in the game, get going forward, okay? I can tell you guys so much how much failure has helped me in my career. I have failed so many times and set me so back, but embracing it, loving it, learning from it, these are the things that failures teach us, and it helps us to fuel our success. It helps us to reach our potential by failing forward and learning to fail from it. Okay?